that Mr. Concha acted unintentionally to give the drugs to Mr. Jason Johnson. Number 2, the consequences are dangerous to human life. As our medical evidence shows, and the defense's medical evidence shows, Adderall has a serious effect on Mr. Johnson's health, and combined with the alcohol that he drank afterwards, killed him. The defense did not object to the point we made about Adderall contributing to the alcohol-based death of Mr. Johnson. And also the law dictates that if you consume Adderall and alcohol and die, as long as Adderall was in your system, Adderall is still at fault, even if it was not the primary cause. Third condition, the person in question is aware his actions were dangerous to human life. Now, the consequences of Mr. Johnson taking Adderall were clearly dangerous to his life as he died. But Mr. Concha was also very aware that his action of giving Mr. Johnson the Adderall was lethal. He said in his own written and spoken testimony that he was aware of how tough Adderall was on the heart. The fourth criterion, and the last one, the person in question was purposely acting with disregard to human life. Now, as the facts show, Mr. Concha clearly acted with conscious disregard, even knowing Jason's health effect and how dangerous Adderall can be for the heart. Mr. Concha still proceeded to sell the Adderall to Mr. Johnson. Regardless of what actually killed Mr. Johnson, a fact that both doctors do not disagree with, because it contributed to his death, the Adderall that is, raised implied malice as evidence. To convict a person of second-degree murder, they must meet these aforementioned criteria, and Mr. Concha's irresponsible actions have met every single one. Now, on the charge of possession for sale of controlled substances, California judicial law dictates 6 criteria for conviction, and I'll go over this a little more quickly. The defendant unlawfully possessed a controlled substance, which includes possession with a valid prescription. And while Mr. Concha did have a valid prescription, he possessed far more than necessary for his own health purposes. We heard Ray talk about how his prescription was 3 Adderall pills per day. However, the time his car was searched by officers of authority, they found a total of 113 pills. 62 in one prescription bottle, 21 in another prescription bottle, and 5 pills spread over 6 sandwich bags. Using some basic elementary school arithmetic, that totals to 113 Adderall pills. Far more than you would need for just taking 3 pills a day. Doesn't that seem a little bit excessive? Number 2, the defendant knew of its presence. Mr. Concha's prescription was public, and there's really no deliberation about this. 3, the defendant knew the substance's nature. Now, Mr. Concha said in his written testimony that he knew the danger of Adderall to the heart. 4, the defendant intended to sell the substance. Now, this is really what the entire argument boils down to. Did Mr. Concha sell the substance? We, the prosecution, believe that he did intend to sell Adderall, as shown by 3 things. 1, the matching plastic bags. The Achieve director talked about how she only needed large-sized plastic bags, while Ray bought large and small sandwich bags. When we questioned Ray and asked him about why he purchased small sandwich bags, he said he didn't remember. Also, the search of his car produced drugs, which the defense countered by saying that it must have been Alex's backpack because Alex left his backpack in there. However, you heard from Alex's testimony that he left he had a red backpack towards the end of the school year, while a blue backpack was found in Mr. Concha's car. Lastly, Mr. Concha was in possession of extremely excessive quantities of Adderall, a quantity that only a drug dealer would need. And countless more examples that we've brought up, that Mr. Concha's intentions were to sell drugs. 5, the substance was an amphetamine. Adderall is pretty clearly an amphetamine. That's a medicinal fact. And lastly, the controlled substance was in a usable amount. This Adderall was in pill form, which is one of the most common forms of medicine. And Mr. Concha, just like he has second-degree murder, has met every criteria for the possession for sale of controlled substances. Now, if there's one thing to really admire about Mr. Concha, it's his impressive entrepreneurial skills. He has managed to introduce Adderall to Rosewood High School. We are asking you, the jury, today, to convict Mr. Concha of the crimes he's committed and not let a dangerous drug dealer corrupt our schools. Mr. Concha killed a person. He killed Jason Johnson, a child, a kid with so much left in life for him. All that is gone. Adderall has left a black stain on Rosewood High School, a stain that will never be cleansed. Adderall did it. Our evidence is more than enough to charge Mr. Concha beyond a reasonable doubt. The defense refuses to acknowledge the blatant and clear evidence and instead relies on shifting the blame to Alex Weaver and ignoring the realities of the situation. It seems to me that the defense has spent more time today praising the defendant's Samaritan actions, like working at Achieve, rather than investigating the facts of the matter itself. Now, the law is clear in its dictations, and the defendant has crossed the lines drawn by this great state. We, the prosecution, vehemently insist that the defendant is guilty of the accused crimes. Now, it is left to the deliberations of the court. Will you convict Ray Cohn?